you know. And if they are strong, well, you compliment them and promote them in their strength. Let me tell you what Chief Burns said during Officer Calloway's appeal hearing. I saw that Calloway had won the award down in Weed and Seed for 2 years straight for excellent service. That was in 2002 and 2004. I saw that Calloway had won the Officer of the Year award from the National Black Nobles, law enforcement executives. And I saw that he had also won a whole stack of commendations and awards from citizens from throughout the community. And so I asked Chief Burns if he considered all of those accomplishments of Officer Calloway before he arbitrarily made the decision to fire Calloway, and he looked me dead in my eye and said unequivocally it wouldn't have made any difference. You know, there's something wrong with that. And so I saw no better comparison than your mayor and your police chief today, 2009, and Mayor Smitherman and Sheriff Jim Clark in Selma, Alabama in 1965.
Okay. I mean, it was just a powerful comparison, and since our listeners, they don't have the privy of this booklet, I just wanted to make sure they got the whole picture of your findings and see the comparison, because I think that's important.
And let me tell you something else about this report.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very unusual report.
Okay.
You know, generally, I would have gone into a situation and I would have looked at the pros and cons about the officers who had been fired, and I would have written a summary about whether they should have, could have, would have, or whatever. And I would have done that just based on the merit of that, the letter of those factors. But this is such a complex situation in Macon, because you have a community here that has almost 50% of the council are black. The major, large numbers of your commanding officers in the police department are black. Yet, you have black police officers being messed over by the numbers. There's something wrong with that. You know, how does a deputy chief who's black sit up in a police department and see that many black police officers being fired for little or nothing, and white police officers beating their wives down at one time, and you take her to the hospital, and then he go to the hospital and beat her down again, you know, and take her cell phone and walk away, and he doesn't get fired. He should be fired on the spot, but he wasn't fired. And so the only time he got eased out of the department was when he decided to beat his wife again several months later. So at that point, he was allowed to resign. That's a white police officer, you see. So how do you allow that to happen if you are a black deputy chief, or you are a black major, you are a black captain or a black lieutenant, and you see this many black officers being misused and abused? How do you sit there and enjoy the salt that God put in your blood and don't raise your hand and say, wait a minute, Chief, there's something wrong with what you're doing?
Now, let me ask you this. Statistics and your findings and your research, you talked about the white officer and the domestic violence piece. As you looked in major comparisons, as you randomly looked at the 21 cases, as you compared the allegations against these six officers, or however many, in total 10 folk who were fired unjustly, and matched that up against their white counterparts, what are some of the other findings that you found in terms of the comparisons?
Let me give you just a few.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm not going to call these officers
okay,
names.
Yeah, I understand.
Usually, I got them named in all of the appeal reports and the court.
Before you get started, this is WIBB 1280 AM Macon.
Okay. We're legal now.
Okay. There's an officer out there, for instance, and this stuff is kind of small, so let me get down here where it is. Okay, and we got processing property and evidence. Okay, this officer didn't process some property right. Okay, and he got a written reprimand for that. Part of what Officer Calloway got fired about was not processing a complaint. And I'm going to tell you how they fired Officer Calloway before we get out of here. Okay, it's called charge stacking, so don't let me forget that.
Okay.
Okay, abuse of position, this officer did. And this is the same officer who beat his wife, you know. Sexual harassment and discrimination. All right. Now this officer got 1 day with suspension that was reduced down to a written reprimand, and he got a 10-day suspension that was reduced down to 5 days. In white records, I was often able to find the screening committee that deals with discipline in the police department recommending one discipline for the officer, but by the time it got to the chief and out the door, it had been reduced down to lesser punishment. Okay, instead of that with Calloway, Calloway got charges stacked on him. For every one thing he did, he got 5 or 6 charges stacked each time. And that's the method of getting rid of a police officer. As a police chief, if I want to fire a police officer, all I have to do is tell my commanding officers, I want you to keep book on everything this officer does wrong. And I want you to let me know when you got enough that I can topple him over the fence. And I can put him out of my department. Now,